Well, good morning and welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom, and we are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on beautiful Marcus Street in Corning. We have an amazing show in store for you this morning. We're going to be talking to the legendary Tommy James from Tommy James and the Shondells. Do you remember Crimson and Clover? Crystal Blue Persuasion? I Think We're Alone Now? Moni Moni, Dragging the Line, etc., etc. One of the 23 gold singles, 9 platinum albums. Well, Tommy James is going to be joining us on the program in just a little bit. He's playing at Tags this Sunday along with Herman's Hermits, starring Peter Noon, and special guest, The Grassroots. So we'll be talking with Tommy James. You can find out more, by the way, at TommyJames.com. As always, you can contact me if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or criticisms. As a matter of fact, I received some after the program yesterday, and I am going to read those probably in the next break. Actually, one main one, because we've been having a kind of an interesting discussion back and forth with the viewers, just playing the game of, do you think Trump's rhetoric helps, hurts? What are your thoughts? We've heard both sides, and I love that about this program because we talk about it so often, but we are a community, and community is so important that we want to hear from all sides, and so far there's been some really thought-provoking emails and text messages, so please contact me at any time. All right, before we take our first break, we got a little time to settle in, get excited for Tommy James. Let's start with a New York State issue. I kind of find this one interesting, and it's something I'm guessing you may not be aware of. I know I wasn't. There's a new law, and this is coming from the Buffalo News. There's a new law that enrolls every New York driver into pricier auto insurance coverage, because that's what we need in New York. More costs, more fees, more of our paycheck going to some unknown entity. But only half that are paying into it will get a benefit, and in this case, the way they word it, half will get no benefit. Okay, so here's kind of the gist of what we're dealing with in New York State. Because of a new state law, every driver in New York will automatically be enrolled in expanding, more expensive auto insurance coverage. I know I was just saying the other day, boy, auto insurance is just too affordable. Just too cheap. Now, that includes millions of unmarried motorists, I know, bear with me, this gets a little weird, who would derive no benefit from the extra coverage. Why would that be? So with this new state law, with this new coverage, it would allow individuals to sue their spouse for damages stemming from negligent driving. Now, I've got to believe that would make for some awkward pillow talk, but that's the new state law. You can sue your spouse for damages stemming from bad driving. The new law does not differentiate between unmarried and married New Yorkers. It's kind of like with Obamacare. Remember some of the things that everybody was forced to pay for that would not affect them, you know, whether it's because of gender or because of marital status or whatever, or age. In memos last year, insurance companies warned Governor Hochul that roughly half the state's driving population would be enrolled in insurance coverage from which it would not benefit. Hochul, signed the bill into law in December without insisting to kind of narrow that down to maybe make it an actual benefit for some New Yorkers and not make other New Yorkers suffer, for lack of a better word, in these higher auto insurance costs. Now, and this is why I bring it up to you. New Yorkers may opt out of this added coverage, which could cost anywhere between, $20 and $84 annually. Now, you're saying, well, $20, $84, I've got subscription services I forget I'm even paying for. That's more than that. I understand. But if you're getting absolutely no coverage, why give the state, whoever, your auto insurance company, $20 to $84 annually? But if you want to opt out in typical easy government fashion, it requires that the consumer be aware of the law first and foremost, and that's why I bring it up to you. You also must contact your insurance company and then sign a form declining the coverage. Now already, and this is when I joked earlier and said it's just so cheap anyway, New Yorkers had among the highest auto insurance bills in the country. The new law was pushed through by groups representing state trial lawyers. I wonder why that would be, who are among the most powerful interests in Albany, powerful lobbyists. So they pushed it through because obviously there would be more lawsuits. You could sue your spouse for their bad driving. A Republican Assemblyman, Steve Hawley, out of Batavia, he argued that attorneys will love this because it creates another lawsuit where attorneys would gain a cut out of the payout. The new law requires state insurance companies to enroll customers in, it's called, quote, supplemental spousal liability insurance. When a driver is at fault for a car accident in New York, others who sustain a serious injury generally may sue the potentially negligent driver for damages, including pain and suffering. But if it was your spouse that caused that accident and you were riding along, you could not sue in the past. But that's not the case now. The exception, if the driver had the supplemental spousal liability insurance, the injured spouse may sue their significant other who was driving and seek insurance payments from the driver's insurer for non-economic damages. So you could sue your spouse for pain and suffering in this scenario. Again, awkward pillow talk, but more lawsuits, and there's no doubt why trial lawyers were lobbying so hard for this bill. So now you're aware, and I don't know if you would find that everywhere else. That's why I think you should always tune in to Frankly Speaking. Running just a little bit late, so let's take a short break. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox. We'll be right back. We are back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. I'm your host, Frank Acom, and we are coming in hot this morning because we're getting messages left and right. Please contact me. I love it. Let's go through a couple I'm going to read, and then a few, or one that I have that I can post so you can see. First, as you may, if you're just tuning in, you may not be aware, but Tommy James is going to be on the program in just a few moments. So the first message we got is Sweet Cherry Wine is the best, all caps, best Tommy James song. Ask him to belt out a few lines. Well, in full disclosure, I recorded it late yesterday, and I did not ask him to sing for us. Again, in full disclosure, but that raises a good question. You can contact me. You see the number right there in front of you. Please, what's your favorite Tommy James song? There's just such a litany of them. Like I said, Crimson and Clover, I love that. I think we're low now, huge. Moni played at every sporting event, every wedding, every big event you've been to. Sweet Cherry Wine is a good song. Dragging the Line, Hanky Panky, remember that one? So that's our first comment. So please weigh in on what your favorite Tommy James song is. The next is, there's already a $40 per year required enforcement charge for auto insurance in New York. Spousal extra coverage is, we're going to say, baloney. Why would you need extra insurance to sue? You don't, is the answer, according to another astute viewer. Okay, that one I'm not going to read. From somebody else. Thank you, though. I'm sorry, that's not fair to laugh at something and not read it, but I think maybe the FCC wouldn't want me to do so. Okay, and then this email, again, I was talking about this earlier. We were having a good back and forth discussion about Trump's rhetoric. You know, he called, I talked about it with the former Congressman Joe Semplinsky yesterday as well on the program, calling Chris Christie, well, not calling him a fat pig, suggesting someone in the audience call him that, and then not to make a big deal out of it, and then further made a big deal out of it. And it is something that a lot of people, when you see that, you laugh. I mean, Joe and I were talking about it yesterday, where it's so perfect Trump style, where I don't know if anybody in the audience actually said it, but he then highlights it as if he didn't say it and that someone else shouldn't say it. Anyway, you know, but this came from a viewer yesterday, and again, weigh in on all these issues of the day. Let me get the screen up so I can see it a little bit better. I still think history will show that among the greatest accomplishments of President Trump will be stirring up the rat's nest in both parties of government, surfacing the deep state and corruption, and saving democracy. It is interesting, before I read the next part, you've got to know you're doing something different in politics when both sides hate you. So stirring up the rat's nest in both parties was fascinating to watch, wasn't it? About President Trump's hard rhetoric. Bold moves in hard times require strong, harsh, modern, direct, going blue talk. I love that expression. Like it or not, the time for sugarcoating and soft-spoken politics is over. Sometimes shouting from the rooftop is the only way to raise it. So there you go. Those are our first comments from you, the viewer. Please continue to weigh in. We've got to take a break because coming up next, and again, I want you to weigh in on what your favorite Tommy James song is, and then about the politics of the day. But coming up next, isn't Tommy James. You've got one more break after this. So let's take a short break, and then we're going to talk about some other issues. Another sort of New York State issue, but also nationwide that I think you're going to find interesting as well. So stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. And we are back with Frankly Speaking on WYDC TV, Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. People are asking me what did the text say that I chuckled at. Well, I didn't notice. They did clean it up for me. So we were talking about being able to sue your spouse with this new insurance coverage where unmarried people get no benefit but are still paying into it. Sue your own spouse, they said, kind of like kicking yourself. Kind of is. Kind of like attacking yourself. But thank you. Okay, do we have more? We do have more comments. Yeah, Trump is not a career politician. He is trying to better this country. That's another comment. Thank you. Keep them coming in. Okay, I mentioned that we're going to talk a New York State issue. You know, very often on this program, we've been critical specifically of the illegal weed stores, the sticker stores as they're known. We've had both sheriffs from Chemung County and Steuben County in talking about it. We've talked about it with congressmen, former congressmen, just about anybody that'll listen. And I would say we haven't been highly laudatory about just the legalization of marijuana in general, just because of perhaps a slippery slope. Many guests have made that similar comment, but I'm starting to think we may change that, not talk about it quite as much, because we could be losing a major part of our demographic. 50% of Americans tried weed, 17% are regular smokers. Now, this is up a lot from past numbers. Half of U.S. residents have tried marijuana, and 17% currently smoke weed. That's both new highs, and I don't know if that's supposed to being punny there or not, since the tune-in dropout 1960s. This is according to a Gallup survey that was just released. The poll attributed the increases to growing acceptance of cannabis, with like New York and others legalizing it. The number of Americans who currently smoke marijuana has more than doubled since 2013, when only 7% admitted to using the drug. That's back in 2013, now up to 17% are regular smokers. Over the same period, Gallup recorded a significant increase in the U.S. public support for the legalization of marijuana. In 1969, think about this. So the year of Woodstock, you think of that counterculture revolution. That was at 12% in support of legalizing marijuana back in 1969. Today, 68%. Wow. Now in New York, and I mentioned it's a New York issue, and that's why I don't want to alienate some of our viewers, so we may start steering clear of this topic. Meanwhile, New York has become the Empire Baked State. Ooh. Well, points for trying, New York Post, but that was kind of a stretch, wasn't it? Some 2.7 million New Yorkers enjoy marijuana at least once a month. State cannabis regulators reported this last month, so it is coming from the regulators. And the number is expected to grow as the state grows out. It's grow and grow. That's weird. Is expected to grow as the state grows out its legal cannabis market. I think that means roll out its legal cannabis market. Well, that's been a disaster so far. But that's enough on that. Just a topic that I found very interesting, and I guess the changing of norms. So what's your opinion on that as well? You can weigh in on all of these issues. We're going to talk about when we finish our interview with Tommy James and the Shondells. We're going to talk a few things here about Biden. We do have a few things about Trump as well. Also, a couple of odds and ends if we have the opportunity to get to them. I feel like we're moving fast already. Friday always goes a little bit faster. We always seem to cover just a little bit more on Friday, but I want to make sure that we have enough time for Tommy James. He's going to be at Tags on Sunday, along with Peter Noon of Herman's Hermits and the Grassroots. That's going to be a fun show. That's Sunday, 5:30 gates open, 6:30 the show begins. Well, we're going to talk to Tommy James about his amazing career, and he has a great book out. I read it years ago, and it's being made into a movie. We're going to ask him about that, but it's called Me, the Mob, and the Music. One hell of a ride with Tommy James and the Shondells. It is a really fascinating look inside the music industry at that time and kind of the mobbed up connections. So if you ever are sitting around looking for just a kind of an entertaining read, I would highly recommend Me, the Mob, and the Music. All right, let's take that break, and then when we come back, the legendary Tommy James. So please stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. This is the M.A. Neal Financial Services section of our program, and we are being joined by the legendary Tommy James. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Well, thank you. Great to talk with you.
So I loved your book when it first came out, and it raises a question. When you are playing Tags and Big Flats this Sunday, how much ukulele will there be?
How much what? Ukulele?
Yeah.
Well, that was the first instrument that I played when I was 4 years
Right.
old, before I was big enough to play the guitar. And so we try to keep it at a minimum. Not much ukulele or banjo, just a lot of guitars.
Okay. I love the book, like I said. And I know originally there was talks of it being made into a motion picture. Is that still in the works?
Yes, it is.
Oh, that's great.
Things are, a little strange right now because all the writers are on strike and all of the, a lot of the movie people. But for 3 years, Hollywood was down, and during COVID.
Right.
And but things are back up and running again, and so we're hoping that things can happen real quickly. We're probably looking at about another 18 months or so.
That's great, though, because Me, the Mob, and the Music is a fantastic book, comes highly recommended. There's something about that story of you and Morris Levy that is just going to play out perfectly on the big screen.
Well, I hope so. I think, the mob and rock and roll together, you can't beat that.
Yeah.
So,
What else do you need?
anyway, it's going to be fun.
Now, obviously, looking at your history, everybody knows your songs. Everybody knows about your amazing career. When you look back at all the awards and all the numbers on the sales, what do you consider your greatest accomplishment?
Well, I think, honestly, the relationship with the fans.
Yeah.
Truly, it's almost multi-generational now. I look out at our concert crowd now, I literally see 3 generations of people.
Yeah.
And it's really an amazing thing to see, and I am just so honored and thrilled to be able to, and I thank the good Lord as well as the fans for the kind of longevity we've had and the ability to do what I really love doing for basically my whole life.
And that's what I thought was very nice in the book at the time, that faith has become such an important part of your life, hasn't it?
Sure has.
Yeah. Going back to what you were saying about the multi-generational fans, it's not just the songs that are so amazing. I think it's also your accessibility and your obviously mutual respect and love for the fans.
Well, it really makes a big difference because, these people have put a roof over my head and food on my table for, 55, 56 years now.
Wow.
And it's been quite amazing, and I really thank them. They have been with me through all kinds of endeavors, all kinds of projects, and they're almost like extended family now.
I believe it. Tommy James is at the Psychedelic 60 Spectacular at Tags and Big Flats this Sunday at 5:30, and you'll be with Herman's Hermits starring Peter Noon and with special guests, the Grassroots. You mentioned 55 years in the business. When was it that you knew that you had made it?
Oh, boy. Well, you're always outdoing yourself,
Sure.
especially the first 5 or 6 years of your career in the record business. The record business basically is something that gives you about maybe 2 years if you're lucky.
Right.
we've been doing it all this time, and I suppose it has to be the first Ed Sullivan show.
Is that right? Really?
Where you really, I mean, there's really no doubt about it at that point that it has happened, and you pinch yourself doing the Ed Sullivan show is like playing at Yankee Stadium,
Yeah.
and it's just you don't get to do the Sullivan show, or you didn't get to do it until you had already made it. So I'd have to say the first Sullivan show.
And you mentioned, obviously, that you keep trying to outdo yourself. So after you get the first platinum record to when you get the 9th platinum record, does that ever lose the excitement, or is that always an excitement?
No, it's always a thrill.
Yeah.
Because this business can say goodbye, say hello and goodbye to you so fast that when it's clear that you're there, it's a very amazing thing, and I thank like I say, the good Lord and the fans for all the blessings we've had.
Now, I read online that many people consider I Think We're Alone Now to be the first Bubblegum song. Do you embrace that? Do you believe in that?
We weren't trying to do that because bubblegum hadn't been invented yet. But,
well, there you go.
When I Think We're Alone Now happened, actually when it was first brought to me, it was actually brought to me as a ballad, if you can believe that.
Oh, really?
And we went into the studio to do a demo, and that's where I came up with the doom, 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 the eighth notes. And that became sort of the signature sound of the record, and that became sort of the signature sound of bubblegum.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I wasn't intentionally doing it, but it's just something that kind of happened. And so, I kind of wear that as a badge of honor.
Of course. And if you think, and I'm going to ask the question in a moment because your music is so important in people's lives and how that feels, but if you listen to like a Crimson and Clover, I Think We're Alone Now, and Mony Mony, those are all such different sounding songs that it'd be easy for someone to mistake that it all comes from one artist.
Well, thank you. Thank you for saying that. Basically, we were all over the place in the 60s.
Right.
And we were allowed to vacillate between, we started out with Hanky Panky, which is, made in a garage, basically. And then through the bubblegum stuff, and then through the party rock stuff with Mony Mony, and then they called it psychedelic, but I mean, Crimson and Clover,
right.
Crystal Blue Persuasion was, they were very different records from each other too. And so I just am grateful for being allowed to be all over the place musically, and it's why we, had the career we did, was because we didn't get pegged to any one
right.
particular sound.
Do you think an artist could have that kind of freedom today?
No, I don't.
Yeah.
Frankly, I think that it would be awfully hard to do. First of all, maintaining the public awareness for long enough to even have a career
right.
like that would be very tough. It's hard today. It's difficult for a young group trying to get discovered, and back in the 60s, it was a wonderful time to make it because everybody was on the same page.
Right.
And radio was so giving, and there was so much music. On my Sirius show, we take great pride in the fact that we're all over the place. There was so much music being made in the 1960s of every kind. You look at the charts; it's unbelievable.
It is.
Everyone from Frank Sinatra to the Rolling Stones were having hits at the same time.
It is. It is very remarkable to think about that time and the freedom that you as artists had, and then to see the cookie cutter nature of the not only the radio industry but obviously the music industry, and it kind of breaks your heart to think that the creative soul that could create so many different songs and so many different sounds in the past, that's probably unattainable now.
Well, you're quite right.
Yeah.
And although it's an amazing time right now, though, because with all the gadgets and all the way to experience music, there's never been more widespread music than there is today.
Right.
You know, you can hear it in so many different formats and platforms, not just radio anymore. But you know, what can you say? The ironic part is that although there's more music being experienced, there's fewer people making it.
Right. That is.
That's really ironic, isn't it?
That is very ironic. Now, and I know I don't want to keep you too long. I just have a couple last questions here, if you don't mind. What does it feel like when you realize that really you are the soundtrack to many people's lives?
Well, it's a great honor.
Yeah.
Look, I'm thrilled about that. That so many people have experienced our music, and that the fans have been so good to us. I'm very honored, and that really, I think the greatest gift that the fans can give you is to become part of the landscape.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a greater honor, because it means that you're there. I mean, you have your niche, your place in history, and I think that's the greatest thing that the fans can give you.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite song of yours? I mean, you have so many to pick from, but is there one that you just think is a little extra special?
Well, that's kind of tough, because
Yeah.
they're all like your children. You know? I probably would pick Crystal Blue Persuasion,
Yeah.
simply because it's such it was such a meaningful record for us.
Yeah.
At so many different levels. The topic of the song, the way the song happened. But it's between Crystal Blue and of course Mony Mony, which
Right.
Has just remained kind of a universal party rock song.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's so hard to pick, but I would have to say those two have to be right up there as the ones that I love to perform the most.
Do you have a favorite cover? Because you've been covered by so many people, and kind of a follow-up to that, when someone covers it, do you think you're more critical of them because it's your song?
No, I'm flattered
Yeah.
when somebody does our song. I'm fascinated by how another artist interprets our
interesting.
music. There have been so many great ones. You know, we've had over 300 major covers done, from
Yeah.
Dolly Parton to REM to Prince.
Yeah.
I think one that I'm the most proud of would have to be Prince's version of Crimson and Clover. He
Yeah.
just really took it to a whole different place. Very futuristic sounding. And then Dolly Parton, who did Crimson and Clover a country style.
Right.
Just amazing. And REM did Dragon Line for the Austin Powers movie, and that was a killer. I'd also have to say maybe Billy Idol doing Mony Mony,
Right.
because that's probably the way we would have done it if it had been in the 80s instead of the 60s.
No kidding. Man,
It's so hard to tell.
you forget about the hits you had with the songs, and then other people on top of it. I think that's got to speak to the longevity or the power of that song.
Well, you're very right. I just, as I say, I'm very honored and flattered when another group or another artist does our music, because of course it keeps the music in front of the fans.
Of course.
But it also means that the song is going to outlive us.
Right. Amazing. Tommy James is our guest. He'll be at Tags in Big Flats on Sunday at 5:30. Just before we go, what can we expect from the concert at Tags with Tommy James?
Well, we're going to cram in as much as we possibly can into the hour and a half that we're on stage. Also, we're going to do a new version of I Think We're Alone now.
Oh, cool.
It's going to be in the movie.
Oh, that's great. Wow, that's
So
something to look forward
it's
to.
kind of exciting. It's slowed down and acoustic and just really is a very important moment in the movie.
Oh, wow.
And so we'll do that. We don't get a chance to play many new songs because the fans want the hits. Every now and then we get to stick something in. But it's going to be. We're going to have fun. We're going to meet some people. We'll shake some hands and have fun with the audience.
Great. I can't wait. TommyJames.com to find out more, to keep updated on the movie. And again, it's at Big Flats, Tags and Big Flats, this Sunday. Tommy, it's been an honor. Thanks so much for being on the program.
God bless. Thank you, Frank.
All right.
Nice talking to you.
Yep. Bye. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Thank you for joining us here on Frankly Speaking on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom, and we are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Thanks again to Tommy James of Tommy James and the Shondells for being on the program. I thought that was a fun interview. The reason I brought up ukulele at the beginning, which I think got missed a little bit there, if you read his book, Me, the Mob, and the Music, he started by the first instrument was the ukulele. So he mentions a kind of a love for the ukulele. That's why I mentioned it. But I enjoyed talking with him. Let's go through, because we do have to take a break in just a moment. Play a little catch up, because Tommy James gave us a lot of time, and I really do appreciate it. But you can't say, okay, legend, we got to cut it short. So he gave me plenty of time, and I really appreciate that. So let's go through a couple of text messages and emails that we've been receiving during that interview. First one. There's a possibility that the numbers of marijuana usage have gone up because it is now legal. I suspect they have always smoked weed. They just didn't admit to it. That's a very good point. If you're just tuning in, we were talking about marijuana usage increase among adults. So that's a good point. I mean, now that it is legal in New York State, I'm sure the numbers have gone up. More people are willing to admit it. I think that's a very good point. Another viewer. Legalize it now for the money, government greed. Yeah, one of the big problems I have with it is when you have politicians that keep saying, it's bad, and then they get the numbers and they see how much revenue, how much tax will come into the state, and then they're all for it. That happened in numerous instances, with legalized gambling, as well as, if you remember, John McCain, Senator John McCain, was always against MMA type fighting, and I believe he ended up changing his tune when it was shown how much money would come into his state from the live events. There's numerous. I mean, that's just the first one that popped in my head, but there's so many examples of that. So all the politicians have preached how bad it was and then went for it because of the government greed, because of the money. So that's a good point. Now let's go to Tommy James messages. Tommy James would have been bigger in the day if it weren't for a tiny band known as the Beatles. That's a good point. But you look at, even with the competition, the numbers that he had. 23 gold singles, 9 platinum albums, sold over 100 million records worldwide. I mean, those are staggering numbers. And the final message before we go to break, Dragging the Line is today's earworm for me. Yes. It's funny, and maybe because I mentioned that I did the interview late yesterday, and he mentioned that he likes Crystal Blue Persuasion. That has been stuck in my head since then. And it's not even necessarily a song you can sing that much to, at least I can. But yeah, let me know. What is your favorite Tommy James song? Or just if you want to talk music in general, or the politics of the day. We're just having a lot of fun on this morning's edition of Frankly Speaking, as we always do, but it's moving fast. So we've got to take a break. Stay with us. Let me take that off the screen. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. We are back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. One more message before we get back into the information here. Your interview with Tommy James just a moment ago Reminded me when I was a college DJ in the 70s. I was forced to interview Todd Rundgren, yes, in the studio. I wasn't a fan, never even heard of him. Had to step in for a DJ that was too nervous to speak. He choked. The thing that I remember is coming up with interesting questions to fill the spot. Your questions really kept him talking. Great job. Nice interview. Thank you very much. I really appreciate that. It is interesting. I would have to say, when you interview a musician, it's either going to be a blast or it is going to be like pulling teeth. You never know. I find that very fun, though. It's something different. When you're talking politics with someone, you kind of know what you're going to get or have an idea. Now, then you find someone in the middle like Ted Nugent. When I interviewed him a few times, it was a mix of music and a mix of politics, as you can imagine. And some people ask me what the most difficult interview, I mean, I've had thousands of interviews, but the most difficult interview I ever had was a musician, and that was Leslie West from the band Mountain, one of my all-time favorite bands. And I was in awe getting ready to interview him, and when he picked up the phone, he started yelling at me. He was not expecting the call. So that's a true story. I mean, if I could, I'd play it for you, but it's a little too awkward for me to play, in my opinion, handling that situation. Hey, what do you think about this this swap for the Americans that are being freed from Iranian prisons? 5 Iranian-American dual citizens held in the notoriously brutal Evin prison in Tehran have been moved to house arrest, according to a lawyer for one of them, and they'll soon be allowed to leave the country. In exchange, this is where I always, I'll let you be the judge. In exchange, the U.S. promised to release multiple Iranians incarcerated for violating sanctions and will allow Iran to use $6 billion of frozen funds for humanitarian purposes. Well, as long as they know it's for humanitarian purposes, there's no way they can they would go against that. I will say it's always great when Americans can come home. I'm not knocking that, but I sometimes wonder if if we're not negotiating whatsoever. It seems like often we're saying, okay, yes, take all of these prisoners and here's money, and it's interesting. But I would love to hear what you have to say, because again, it's always heartwarming when Americans can come home. Also on foreign policy, there's some criticism coming or going towards the White House with the request for more funding for Ukraine. I know, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I remember when Joe Sempolinsky had said at one time that it's not about helping Ukraine. We all want to help Ukraine, but it can't continue to just be a blank check. There has to be some auditing, for lack of a better word, making sure we know that it is being used in a way that it's supposed to be. So the White House wants Congress to spend 6 times more on Ukraine than the border. And that means fentanyl crisis as well. The Biden administration is requesting Congress spend 6 times more on supporting Ukraine in its war against Russia than on the border and fentanyl crisis plaguing the nation. So he asked Speaker McCarthy for $24 billion in aid to Ukraine, split between $13 billion for defense-related spending and $11 billion in economic and humanitarian assistance. But Biden only requested, and it's sad that when we say, we're still talking billions, but we say only, but Biden only requested $4 billion in spending on the border and immigration, as well as combating fentanyl flowing into the U.S. from foreign origins. The total combined amount of the request reached roughly $40 billion. Okay. We've got to take a short break, but weigh in on that as well. We will be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, please stay with us. You know, I really do think that we could have spent the whole morning broadcast just reading these amazing texts and emails, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. We're getting such great comments flowing in. I guess everybody's jazzed for the weekend, huh? Just seem to be in great moods out there. I will say, and this is a good point, when we were talking about what we gave Iran in exchange for those American prisoners, this is a text that we just received. The United States gets extorted by rogue nations again and again. It just, to me, until we learn more, it seems to me anyway that we don't negotiate. It seems, and I listen, I'm not behind the scenes, but if that's how the negotiations end, we don't always seem to come out the best in the deal. We do have to take another short break to wrap things up. That's our last break. And then we're going to wrap up this program. I know it went quick. It's been a lot of fun. I did want to say this right before we do go. Biden finally admits, and I don't think on purpose, that the Inflation Reduction Act had, quote, less to do with reducing inflation than he originally said. Quote, I wish I didn't call it that. It has less to do with reducing inflation than it does providing for alternatives that generate economic growth. And NBC's, I'm running late, but NBC's Katie Tur from MSNBC and from the program Katie Tur Reports said inflation keeps rising. It's not bad news. Could you ever imagine an anchor saying that if it were a Republican president? Of course not. But no, yes, inflation is rising. It's not bad news. Yeah, she said. That's the exact quote. I don't know how you spin it, folks. It's amazing. Yeah, you're paying more, but it's not bad news. It's a little bit better. I don't know. We got to take a break. Last break. Then we're wrapping things up, so stay with us. All right, you got a little bit longer of a studio sneak peek there. I knew that break was coming in a little short, so don't worry. I was aware. I wasn't just staring off into space. Okay, we are out of time, but a last couple quick hits, okay? CNN's Jake Tapper, who would not report on the Hunter laptop, originally saying it could be Russian disinformation. It looks like a plant. It looks fake. It looks like a hack job. Anything he could do to not report on it. Now he keeps saying every time he talks about Hunter, we're talking about it a lot. He didn't. But he said to Comer that certainly there's sleaze, but no evidence that President Biden did anything illegal. Boy, again, it's so amazing to see the difference in coverage depending on who the president is. The Washington Post, speaking of more, we had Katie Tur saying, increased inflation is not bad news. Now you have Jake Tapper saying that. Now we have a great piece at the New York Post editorial board. The Washington Post and its fact checker embarrasses themselves yet again with latest, quote, update of their Biden corruption report. You can find it for yourself, but the way they've just had to update it little by little and say officials who worked for Biden at the time told the fact checker that no such meeting took place. Could you that's how they corrected it. Could you imagine the Washington Post just taking, let's say Trump, Bush, whoever, any Republican, taking their staff's word for it and saying, well, that's what they told us at the time it wasn't true, so we thought it wasn't true. They really do embarrass themselves. There's a piece out there that is suggesting on the world scene that many people, the international scene is probably a better way to word that, believe that Joe Biden will not run for re-election and that it will actually be Michelle Obama that's put in at the last minute. That's a conversation that this author had with a foreign politician. And there was another one out of the UK as well that both believed, I know it's anecdotal, but that is kind of interesting that they believe on the international front that it's not going to be President Biden who ultimately makes it through the convention, that it's going to be Michelle Obama. Liberals are outraged at Woody Harrelson, the actor, and he's always been very liberal, but he was seen, and the audacity on him, with an RFK Jr. hat on. People literally, prominent leftists, prominent Democrat strategists, coming out and saying that Woody Harrelson just canceled himself. Woody Harrelson is dead to me. Those type of things. Wow. Just because of the hat. Okay. Jack Smith wants Trump convicted by Super Tuesday. And I think that's all we're going to have. Yep, that's all we have time for. Folks, I cannot thank you enough for all the great comments, all the great discussion this morning. I hope you have an amazing weekend. I hope you're able to see Tommy James. And I really appreciate him being on the program. So have a fun, safe weekend, and we will be back on Monday morning with Frankly Speaking, starting at 7, right here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I look forward to it already.